So, hi, welcome to our webinar today. The topic for this one is combining PRINCE2 with Agile. So this is, I can't think how many we're in now, about 6 into this series of webinars that we've been doing, 6 or 7 maybe.
Something like that.
But yeah, we've been doing these webinars now for the last few weeks. This one today, everything you're going to be learning is taken from either the PRINCE2 course or the PRINCE2 with Agile course. These are courses that we're going to be offering come the new year, so that's something to look forward to, definitely something to put in your calendars. It'll be about 20 to 30 minutes. If you have any questions, just feel free as we're going along to just pop them in the chat box that you can see at the bottom of your screen. We'll revisit them at the end when we have our Q&A session. We also have some frequently asked questions that we will go through, just stuff that we get asked all the time, that we think it's a good idea to kind of point out for you guys, just makes sense to answer the big question. So I'll introduce you now to Mark Eaton, who is our training manager here at Certain Limited. He's going to be the one taking you through the course today. He is the all-wise one. So I will hop off to give you give him your undivided attention. That's the right way. And I will return at the end for the Q&A. So enjoy, and I will see you in a little while. Have fun.
Hi guys. Well, that's zoomed out quite a lot there. That's better as it adjusts. Fantastic. Well, thank you, Sophie, ever the professional. Thank you very much for that introduction. So today, guys, in our short webinar, we're going to look at combining PRINCE2 with Agile. And of course, when PRINCE2 originally came out in about 1994, when it first started to appear, of course, Agile wasn't very well established at that point. In fact, 1994 was when Scrum was first put out as well. It's a big year, eh? Agile PM, Scrum, a lot of things started to appear, but PRINCE2 was first published in 1994 in the PRINCE2 guise. It's called Prompt before that, if you're interested. So today I just want to start by looking at the difference between the two, making sure that we understand what we mean by PRINCE2 and what we mean by Agile. We're then going to look at principles, because principles is what the drivers for both elements that we're looking at today, both PRINCE2 and Agile. And then we're going to look at some Agile practices, the two most common Agile practices of incremental and iterative practices. We're going to look how they work in a PRINCE2 environment. Okay, so to start with then, let's just look at the two and compare the two. So PRINCE2 is a very mature project management framework. It's designed and created for project management. It's put together by taking experience from what must literally be thousands of projects, project managers, project sponsors, etc., etc. And the beauty of PRINCE2, if you've not met PRINCE2 before, I'm sure some of you have, is that it's generic. In other words, it doesn't deal with the specialist elements of PRINCE2. It's made up of 4 key elements. As you can see there's a set of principles, there's a set of themes, okay? There's a set of processes, and processes are what we do and when we do it, okay? And then, of course, the 4th one, which I've not put on the slide there, but is applicable to all project management frameworks, which is your particular environment, your context, your unique context of your project. And the key here is probably the themes sorry, I beg your pardon. The processes are very important, because it's the managing product delivery process within PRINCE2 that benefits most from an Agile approach. So a lot of people come to me and say, you know, is Agile a project management methodology like PRINCE2 or like APM or PMI? And of course, the answer really is no. Okay, the Agile is what's referred to there on the slide as framework agnostic. Okay, in other words, it's a set of values and a set of principles and really should be described as a mindset. Okay? Whenever you see the term agile, it should always be in a lowercase a, unless it's obviously used at the beginning of a sentence and all that type of malarkey. But it's really important, guys, that we appreciate that agile is a mindset. Okay, so we can apply that mindset, and PRINCE2 being generic is really important, because then we can apply the agile mindset into our PRINCE2 practice. And as long as we are applying the principles based within each of them, then of course we are actually achieving what we want to achieve within the organization and within our strict, unique context. So Agile has 4 value statements, and I don't know if you've ever seen the Agile Manifesto. You can look it up at Wikipedia, Google, Bing, they all have it. And the 4 value statements say what we prioritize. So we prioritize people over process in an Agile mindset. We prioritize, I beg your pardon, working solutions over documentation. We prioritize collaboration over contract. And finally, the 4th one, we prioritize change over following a plan. And it's really important that we first understand that Agile is about applying those values, those prioritizations. Not that we ignore process, or that we ignore documentation or contracts or plans, okay? But we just prioritize the other elements, the people, the working solution, okay? Collaboration and change above it, okay? So that's the first thing I want to do. So the first thing we need to look at is how do the principles in both camps line up. And in PRINCE2 there are 7 principles, and in Agile there are 12 principles. Once again, if you go to the Agile Manifesto page, that's agilemanifesto.org, there's a link to those principles. So let's have a look at how these principles line up. And I'm going to put the PRINCE2 ones first, mainly because there's only 7 of them, so it's easier. Okay. So the first one is that we should have a continued business justification. And the practical side of this particular principle, guys, as those of you who've practiced PRINCE2 will know, is we don't start without a justification. And we monitor that justification throughout the project as a guide to continuation. That's why it's called a continued business justification. And of course, at the end of the project, as we move into the post-project environment, we're using our business justification to measure the success of our project. So in PRINCE2, there's a very practical side to having a continued business justification. And remember, the principles of PRINCE2 are mandatory. You're not doing PRINCE2 unless you're following the principles. Whereas in the Agile world, they have a principle that says our highest priority is to satisfy the customer through early and continuous delivery of valuable software. Okay, that's been edited out recently to set the word software out and put the word solution in, by a number of people. Okay, and it's really important that our highest priority is to satisfy the customer, because it's their business justification. When PRINCE2 talks about a continued business justification, we're talking about the customer's business justification. These are the people who want to take advantage or see value in the change. And if that's not obvious, just look for who's paying for it. Okay, they're the customer. So it's really important that we see that the PRINCE2 principle aligns with the Agile principle of satisfying the customer, because it's their justification. We can't satisfy the customer. Why are we doing it? The next PRINCE2 principle is learn from experience. And in the Agile world, we say at regular intervals, the team reflects on how to become more effective. And the only way they can do that is by looking back. If you on the webinar about Scrum practice, or if you want to come on one of our fundamentals courses on Scrum, we look at the empirical process based on You know, the old-fashioned plan, do, check, act. Okay? And it's really important because in this ever-changing world, which is much more uncertain, okay, much more risk-based, then it's very important that we have the opportunity to learn from what we do and apply that in. I was reading recently about a new term that's come around. You may have heard of it a while, but a new term for me, which is fail-safe. In other words, make sure that you try something, but in an area of safety. You know, where there's no finger pointing, there's no way that people will, you know, lay the blame. The idea is to learn something. Okay, so those principles fit. In PRINCE2, we have a principle of defined roles and responsibilities that ensures that the right people are aware of their responsibilities and those responsibilities get carried out. And in the Agile world, it expands that a bit more, and it says that business people, in other words, the customer and the developers, the specialists within your project team, must work together daily throughout the project. And the idea here is, of course, in both areas, that we get a better product. Because if we involve the business people, if we involve the users, if we involve the sponsors, then we get a better product. And that the decision making is made at the right level. One thing that I was very aware of as an IT project manager, which is my background, was that I was sometimes called upon to make decisions that I shouldn't be making, because my level of authority and my level of responsibility wasn't the right level. It should be made at a higher level than me. But because of an abdication of sponsorship, I was having to make the decision. Therefore, all the risk was on my shoulders. The second principle of the Agile world is that defines roles and responsibilities is to build projects around motivated individuals. Find out what motivates your people. Once again, it goes back to the value about putting people before process. Okay? And for me, one of the key drivers of motivation is, you know, a little bit of autonomy. The ability to make decisions at my level that will affect the way that I work. And I know that sounds a bit, you know, hang on, Mark, two conflicting views, but it's not. It's about making the decisions at the right level so that the people that you're delegating the work to have a level of autonomy which really motivates them, okay, allows them to perform better in the project world. We then have one that comes up a lot. A lot of people ask me this question and say, in PRINCE2 we manage by stages. In other words, we break the project down into an element of control points. And I've always pointed out that if you actually read the book, if you read the PRINCE2 book, it says if you work in a very risky environment, those stages should be very short. And of course, in an Agile world, we work in an uncertain world. There's a greater degree of uncertainty. That's why Agile is more and more popular, because the environment we're working in is much more complex than it used to be. Okay, and it says there that we welcome changing requirements even late in development, and that's one of the reasons that PRINCE2 had the principle of manage by stages, so that you can adjust your project based on the environment that you're working in, because it's an ever-changing environment. It's just not static. And the other one is deliver working software frequently, from a couple of weeks to a couple of months, in preference to the shorter timescale. And we'll talk about this later on when we talk about incremental practices within a PRINCE2 world. Because the old prescriptive project management methods, what are often referred to as waterfall methods, everything gets deployed right at the end. And people have found and people have matured to a point where they've realized that they're missing a trick with that sometimes. Sometimes deploying something early, even if it's only part of the solution, means that you can improve that part of the solution as you move through the project, giving a better result of your project. Management by exception, once again, is about building around motivated individuals, giving them a safe space in which to work, giving them autonomy within their safe space. This means building an environment of trust within your project environment, where you trust your specialist to deliver the solution within the parameters laid down. Moving on to the final two then, first one is focus on products. And this has always been a very big deal for me as a PRINCE2 trainer and as a PRINCE2 practitioner. It's always been a really big deal that people focus on products. Yeah. And one of the key Agile principles for me now as an Agile practitioner, and a PRINCE2 practitioner and an Agile practitioner are not dissimilar. You know, they're the same person. That working software is the primary measure of progress. In other words, I haven't progressed in my project until I've got something done, something finished. Then I've progressed. And I don't know if any practicing project managers out there, or program managers, or portfolio managers, you will have realised that people who talk in percentages, yeah, they're often hiding things. And it's very easy to give an impression through a percentage that we're actually progressing through the project, but it's not until we deliver something that we've actually progressed. So we've got to focus on our products. We've got to give continuous attention to technical excellence, because if we don't, then what we're doing, you know, what we end up with is what's called technical debt. Stuff that we have to fix after the end of the project. So by focusing on technical excellence and making sure people have an understanding of what it means to be done, that it allows us to do it. And it allows us to progress, and it allows us to produce something that is of value to the business. Simplicity, maximizing the amount of work not done. Now that sounds a bit counterintuitive as well. It's something I must admit that along with some of the terms that Agile uses, like servant leadership and work not done, what that means is maximizing actually the work that has been done. Not repeating yourself, not overcomplicating, not overscoping or over-engineering. Yeah? Making sure we realize when done is done and we stop. Okay, once again, that might be on a particular product, it might be on a particular feature, but we stop work on that one and we maximize that work through deployment. And then, of course, best architectures, best solutions emerge from self-organizing teams. Something we've touched on a couple of times. Motivated, small, self-organizing teams, self-managing. And once again, PRINCE2 puts that into place. If you look at the PRINCE2 processes, then there's a distinct difference between managing the stage and managing product delivery. And this is where you not deploy, that's the wrong word, okay? You delegate the work to the team manager. And you delegate that work, and effectively, if you read PRINCE2 properly and look at it properly, you stand back then and go, right, okay, I'll get a regular report from you, and if everything's going a bit peaked-on, I'll be the first to know, is that right? And you set out that area of safety for your organisation, for your teams, for your specialist teams, which allows them to be almost autonomous within their safe area. All you're asking for is a regular report. And then finally, tailor to suit the project environment. Okay? And there's two Agile principles here. One is that we promote, or Agile processes promote sustainable development. In other words, it's something that you'll be able to keep a pace with throughout the entire project, rather than the immature way where basically you cram everything into the last 2 weeks. Okay? You spread it out across the project by prioritizing the work. Pardon me, excuse me. And it's really important that we understand that. And then finally, the most effective method of conveying information is face-to-face. And we're all sat here on a webinar, and you're probably thinking, yeah, Mark, how do we do that in this particular situation that we're in now, where we're not actually in work? We're all working from home. And it's really important, guys, that you keep up that face-to-face communication through some sort of software, whether it be Adobe Connect, which is what we use, or Zoom, or Microsoft Teams, yeah, or Skype, or whatever. You know, plan in face-to-face meetings. Okay, plan in face-to-face social events with your team, where they can just come in perhaps for the last half hour of a particular day and just chew the cud and fire off, you know, what's actually going off. Yeah. Well, how can we make this, you know, particular situation work for us without losing that adhesion that we have as a team and as a project team? So those are the principles, guys. Let's have a look at a couple of practices now. Okay, and the first one is timeboxing. And if you're using PRINCE2, there are two ways that we can use timeboxing. Now remember, a time box is just a fixed period of time. Yeah. So we can have the stage as a time box, or we can have a work package as a time box, and we can have time boxes within time boxes, remember. Excuse me, I beg your pardon. Yeah, Scrum is famous for having 4 time boxes inside one time box. So the time box is the sprint, that's the outer time box. Inside that we have sprint planning, yeah. We have the daily Scrum, we have a review, and we have a retrospective. Yeah, all time boxed. So you can have the stage as a time box and the work package as a time box. Now remember, time boxes are really good for managing budget and time frame, because they're fixed over that period of time. You can't, once you've entered the time box and you've agreed the budget and you've agreed the time frame, that's it, it's set. You have to know about prioritization of work. Yeah, so you might use Moscow or stacked prioritization, but Timebox is a really good element of control within a project environment, because at the end of every time box there's a review to recap what we've delivered and replan what we're going to do next. Okay, and to take the opportunity to learn from that. Yeah? So time boxes work in a project environment. They work with PRINCE2. Then we have incremental deployment, and I call this slicing the cake. It's my way of explaining how to do incremental deployment. And the cake that we talk about there, guys, sorry, yeah, is a layered cake. Okay, a layered cake. All right, and in my old practice, when I used to before I met Agile and started using Agile, I used to slice the cake horizontally. So I'd have let me just click on this, a requirements slice, yeah, followed by a design slice, followed by a development slice, a testing slice, and a deployment slice. And of course, the analogy is that each slice has got a different flavor, so you're just looking at that flavor for each slice, and each slice is a big round. Whereas that's not how we eat cake. It's not how I eat cake anyway. Yeah. I like to eat my cake by taking out a slice across the layers. Okay? And this is what we mean by incremental deployment. It's about doing a bit of requirements, a bit of design, a bit of development, a bit of test, a bit of deployment in a short period of time to deliver what's known as a feature. So this example might be infrastructure. I'm an old IT project manager, so I'm using terms that I know. So my first slice is almost like an eighth or a quarter of the cake, but it's got every layer in it. Okay, and I'm serving all those layers up. That might be my minimum marketable feature. Some people call it MVP, minimum viable product. But it's about slicing the cake through the layers and thinking about, right, okay, what can we deploy quickly? I can deploy the infrastructure. In fact, I used to, when I was an IT project manager, I would deploy the infrastructure before I would attach users to it. So actually, I did, I sliced it throughout the layers rather than trying to do it as a whole. because that's the road to failure. Whereas if I do infrastructure, I can make sure my infrastructure is good, and I can adjust what I'm going to do in the rest of the project through learning through that infrastructure. And that's how I became an Agile practitioner, because people turned to me and went, you're doing it Agile way, Mark. And I went, am I? I didn't know that. Yeah. I looked into it, and there it was. So we can deploy, and remember, the reason we like to deploy early, guys, is so that we can learn something. Yeah? If you deploy something early, you can learn from it very quickly. Okay? Even if it's only a pilot, you can learn from it. Even if it's only a closed environment, a closed bunch of users, you can learn from it, and you can apply that later into your project. So combining your time boxes with the incremental, this is where you really become Agile. So here we see in stage 1, we've got 4 work packages. So we've got 2 teams working in parallel. Each one's got a work package. When they finished, have they done? Yeah. Then they'll do the second work package. Is it ready to deploy? What have we learned? Then we'll deploy it. And then we'll repeat in the second stage. But the real value here, guys, is here. We learn something at the end of stage 1, and we learn something through deployment that we can apply into stage 2. So we're combining, we're controlling the work, and we're, and we're improving as we move along. Right, well, wow, 27 minutes past that. We got right into that. So if anybody has any questions, if you want to chuck it into the, or put it, sorry, I beg your pardon, that's my Yorkshire vernacular coming out there. If you want to put it into the chat, that would be fantastic. Hopefully Sophie's around, and she's going to reappear any minute to run the question and answer session. We've got some questions that we've sort of garnered over the years as we've been delivering these courses and these webinars to do. But if anybody's got a question, please put it into the chat box, and we'll try and answer them as best we can. So
hello again. So while we wait for you guys to pop any questions in that you might have, I'll start asking the frequently asked questions. So I've always thought of PRINCE2 as very waterfall. Is that how it was originally designed?
The answer, in all honesty, is yes. Back in the day, back in the early 90s, late 90s, yeah, being an Agile practitioner wasn't really a thing for project managers. Okay, it has started to be used by software companies to develop product, but not for projects. So yeah, if you went to a training course in the 90s, perhaps the noughties, and it will have felt very waterfallish. But as people like myself have come along and started to apply Agile principles and Agile practices, then it's moved more towards the Agile way of working as well. PRINCE2 is not, something that is bound by approach. You can apply any approach into PRINCE2. So Agile or Waterfall, yeah, or a hybrid of the two. If that's what works for you, that's what works for you.
Next one, I have always thought of Agile as just for software development. How can I use it for my new working practice project?
First off, that's its history. Okay, yeah, the history is that Agile comes from software development, but over the last sort of 10 to 15 years, a lot of people have seen it as something that can be applied into a complex environment. In other words, if you've got a degree of uncertainty within your project or within your product development environment, then you should be applying Agile principles. And I would encourage everybody, okay, and I think I do this a lot, I would encourage everybody to, what's the right tool for you? Okay, if Agile is, use Agile. Super.
Okay, well, we've got something from Jennifer. So I don't have any specific questions today. The two methods seem to complement each other very well. However, she does ask, this would seem the most sensible, most effective approach to take. i.e. mixing both. So what have you got to say about that?
I totally agree. I totally agree. In my career, I've gone through a lot of approaches and tried a lot of methodologies. I'm trying to get, so I'm centering the, which way? That way, that's it. And yeah, taking Prince2 and applying Agile works in a project environment. Okay, it works brilliantly. I wouldn't, I would wholeheartedly agree with Jennifer that, yeah, mixing the two, especially focusing on the Agile interface at managing product delivery. For those of you, I know Jennifer knows Prince2, so that I wholeheartedly agree.
Mm-hmm. While we've got a couple of people typing, but while they finish typing what they're saying, I'll ask the third frequently asked question. So, is waterfall no longer good practice?
No. Now, waterfall is still good practice in the right conditions. Okay, and this is really important, guys. There's a very famous quote that if all you've got in your hand is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. Okay, this is why I would encourage people to get out there and try lots of different ways of actually delivering, approaches to their project and practices within their project. Okay, because you want, in certain conditions, waterfall is brilliant. And I've said this before, I believe, in civil engineering, waterfall approach is the best approach. If you're laying a new train track, delivering a new road, building a new bridge, yeah, even delivering a building, use waterfall, for heaven's sake. Don't use Agile. You never know what you might end up with. Okay? Yeah.
All right, so we've got one from Liz now. So she says, we have an Agile dev team, but when we come to a project where we are launching, we tend to stick to a waterfall method when it comes to getting ready for launch. Do you suggest we celebrate our stage deployments or wait until launch? Oh, and then she says, as we tend to get project fatigue, as the project can take up to 2 years to deliver.
I think that's a brilliant idea. Yeah, Liz, I think it's a really, celebrate your deployments. Okay, make sure that you market them, make sure that you celebrate them, make sure that the team start to, especially if your projects can take up to 2 years. Yeah, that's a long time working on a project. So breaking that down into smaller projects and celebrating the deployments as a project success might be an absolutely fantastic idea. It gives your team, I know it sounds daft, but it gives your team, especially if you do it towards the end of the week, it gives your team that, wow, we've done that. And then they come back the following Monday and everybody's right, let's on to the next bit. And so it's a really fantastic idea. I would definitely celebrate those deployments. Okay, make sure you market them, make sure you celebrate them, make sure you do a retrospective where you sit down with the team and say, what did we learn? Yeah, that often revitalizes your team as well.
Well, Jennifer says that they do that, and it's very motivating. So that's that. There you go. We've got one last frequently asked question that we'll cover. I'm aware that Georgina's had to go. I'm aware we've gone a little bit over, so we'll just do this last one. As of all the certification paths available, which would you recommend? So, what do you think?
Well, my honest answer, being a trainer, is all of them. But you can't do all at the same time. It depends what you're trying to achieve. Okay, if I was new into project management, or I've got a team that's new into project management, okay, especially if they're already agile, then I would do something like Prince2 or Prince2 Agile Prince2. Okay, is what I would do. I would certainly, if I identify I've got a complex environment, I would send all my team on an Agile PM course. Okay, how to manage, how to do projects using Agile. Please don't send them on a Scrum course, because all your trainer will do is say it's not for projects, it's not for projects, and that can be off-putting a little bit. Okay. You can use Scrum in projects, don't get me wrong, before everybody mails in and says Mark's completely wrong. I know that, but it needs adaptation. So something like Agile PM would be brilliant, okay, in that particular way. If you're already an experienced project manager and you want to advertise that fact, APM or PMI, depending on what industry you work in. If you work in the UK, APM. If you want to work in the Middle East or America, PMI. It's just where they're situated.
So there's lots of different options then for people to be choosing from.
Give us a call. Give either you or I a call or Carl a call, and we'll help you out.
We will indeed. Fab. That's it for questions. So I know, Mark, you've got a little bit of news to share about stuff upcoming. So I'll hand back over to you for that. And then we'll be finishing off, guys, just in case anyone needs to nip off.
Yeah, cool, guys. So a little bit, just so you know, follow-on training. We're already doing Agile PM and Scrum Master training through the APMG. Hot off the press, we're just going now through our accreditation for Axelos, so PRINCE2, PRINCE2 Agile, the new MSP. If you've not heard about the new MSP and you're involved in programming, or program management, sorry, not programming, that's a different thing. You're involved in program management, big changes in managing successful programs, to the point where you unfortunately have to do both exams again, but you know, it's something I've got to do in the next month or so as well. So we have got another webinar coming up. I'll come back to that in a sec. So I'm off next week because of the COVID lockdown. I've got off next week. Oh, happy birthday, Jennifer! I didn't realise it was your birthday as well. I knew he said it was next week, but good. But I'm off next week, so I'll see you on the 1st. Scope management, black arts of project management. I think we ought to call this series sometime, Sophie. Scope management, the most overlooked element of a lot of projects. How do we manage scope and stay on track for scope, so to speak? So don't forget the 20% off PM series, 20% off PM series. That's put that into your booking or mention it to our account managers, and they'll sort you out. And that's it, really. We've got a full range of courses available or coming up to be available now. We're so close, we may as well say, that we're ready to do them. But guys, thank you very much, especially at, Jennifer, thank you for coming on your birthday. Hopefully you have a good one. Staying socially distancing and staying safe.
It's worth just mentioning, guys, as well, if anyone did miss any of this, or if you've missed a previous webinar and you'd like to have a catch up, they are all available. This one will be late today on our YouTube channel, which is just Cert Unlimited. So you can catch up on all previous webinars there. So thank you everyone for coming on today. It was nice to see you all again. So we will hopefully see you not next week, the week after for scope management. So thank you again.
Thank you again. Bye.
Bye, guys.